Today I'd like to welcome you to part 2 of the 15 Common Mistakes series. In this episode, we're going through another 12 mistakes that players make surprisingly often. My goal is simple: to find at least a few mistakes that you might still be making, so this video is actually useful for you. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, I highly recommend watching it first. With that said, let's get started. One of the most common mistakes is committing too early to the missile interceptor technology. Yes, your opponent might have a few Stormcallers, but picking missile interceptor on Mustangs too early is a huge mistake. Why? Because nothing stops your opponent from simply selling those Stormcallers over the next 2 rounds. And what are you left with? This is where a very common misunderstanding appears. People think, it only cost me 200 supply, so it's not that bad. But that's not true. If you later want to turn those Mustangs into a carry unit, you'll pay 200 extra supply for the second and third technologies compared to a situation where you never picked missile interceptor in the first place. So choosing missile interceptor too early doesn't just cost 200 supply. It actually destroys the potential of half your board to take on any meaningful role in the game. Now, to be clear, this is not a game-losing mistake. In the long run, missile interceptor will almost always be useful, but when it comes to technology choices, it's often better to wait, even if, in the current round, it looks like the best possible play. One mistake that seems obvious, yet is surprisingly common, is picking a mass-produced unit card, for example Fortress, after you already have that unit on the board. These cards reduce the cost of the unit, but at the same time lower its base stats. And this is the key issue. The stat reduction also applies to units that are already on the field, and you do not get any refund for the units you've already bought. This happens especially often with Sabertooths and Sledgehammers, because their mass-produced cards are simply very strong. Still, it's important to be aware of the downside. You're weakening units that are already deployed on your board. The next mistake, or rather a conceptual misunderstanding, goes like this. We all know that Wraiths absolutely destroy chaff, units like Crawlers, and they're also one of the best counters to Wasps. So it's easy to think that the perfect answer to a Crawlers plus Wasps composition is simply mass Wraiths, right? Well, not exactly. Yes, Wraiths are extremely effective, but a healthy composition always includes some kind of front line. You need a bit of cannon fodder to buy time for those highly efficient units to actually ramp up and do their job. If you're going to overcommit in one direction, it's always better to buy too much chaff than too much main DPS. Which side should you defend? This is a question often asked by players who prefer asymmetrical play, where you commit most of your army to a single flank. It's a valid strategy, but once buildings enter the game, you're often forced to choose which side you actually want to hold. Let's say one side has an anti-armor cannon with a wall, and the other side has a bare rapid-fire cannon. A very common mistake is to deploy on the side that feels weaker, the one without the wall. But here's the problem. An anti-armor cannon, even with a wall, often can't defend itself against a single group of Crawlers. The tower falls and you lose the round. Meanwhile, a rapid-fire cannon would handle that same push without any trouble. In my opinion, you should expose the side that can at least defend itself against a simple, low-investment play. Since we're already talking about buildings, here's another common mistake. and more importantly, a simple way to punish it. That wall often creates a false sense of security. It makes players think it can replace proper chaff, which leads to situations where they deploy a lone saber-tooth behind it. That saber-tooth is already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. All you have to do is count the number of tiles to the wall, place your unit at its maximum attack range, and then add those extra tiles to the distance. I explain this interaction in detail in my shorts, where you can see exactly how it works. You win a unit versus unit fight. Even though it looks like the wall gives your opponent an advantage, in reality, it ends up working in your favor. Another common mistake is failing to defend against a Wasp swarm. This is actually a crucial point, since it happens in almost every game. If the Wasp swarm card is available, you have to expect it. The opponent could strike the left flank, the right flank, or the rear, but you only have 2 deployment slots. You can't place a Mustang squad in every possible location. On the other hand, if you try to cover a flank with a missile device, it often ends up letting 2 Wasps survive, which still creates a major threat to your tower. Here's my advice. Defend the flanks with units and place a missile device at the rear. If the missile device is positioned correctly at the back, there is no Wasp swarm setup in which any Wasps survive the blast. So, if you want to seal your defense properly, this is exactly how it should be done. Another play that I personally find somewhat controversial is igniting oil as early as possible. You get oil and immediately invest into setting it on fire to completely dominate the round. Don't get me wrong, this play does have its advantages, but there's a cost. By doing this, you're effectively losing 1 full round of oil value. You could first deploy the oil and already benefit from its not-so-weak base effect. Let it help you win the round and only ignite it in the following one. This approach may reduce the surprise factor, but it ensures that 2 consecutive rounds are affected by your abilities. Another mistake, and one that I see quite often, is placing your fragile units at the edges of the battlefield, far away from your towers. Not only does this waste their attack range in fights with units trying to flank them, but more importantly, it makes them easy targets for the very common Rhino drop ability. No shield generator will save you from this, and the loss of a carry unit in this way is extremely costly for your game plan. In an asymmetrical game, where players attack from different sides, an easy way to lose is by ignoring a seemingly harmless sandworm. It could be any unit, really, but the sandworm is the most dangerous because of its immortality while moving underground. Using a mobile beacon, it can drag your entire flank out of position, preventing them from attacking enemy tower. Then you end up with a debuff for losing your tower, and the round is lost. To defend against this trick, the best strategy is to cut off the path of the potential mobile beacon, or if the unit is already this close, simply place one of your units under it, so it gets locked in combat and doesn't have time to burrow. Your opponent deploys an Overlord, fully upgraded and with an item, and your entire composition is built around arc lights. Now, I'm not sure if it's laziness or just the temptation to buy the 4th technology, but a common line of thinking goes like this. Arc lights have destroyed everything so far, so if they take on the task of killing the Overlord too, it should be fine. Here's the problem. Buying the technology that allows your units to attack flying units ends up overloading them. To destroy the Overlord, they stop focusing on what they were originally meant to handle. A much better choice in this situation would have been to spend that money on melting points instead. This might sound funny, but another common mistake is not picking the advanced shield device card. In my opinion, in 90% of cases, it's the best card to choose. Its value in the game cannot be overstated. It helps hold weaker flanks, protects against opponent abilities, and forces the enemy to attack something that gives no experience to their units. And as a bonus, if the shield survives, it stays for the next round. What more could you ask for? Whenever I see an opponent skip this card, I can't help but grin because I know they just made a mistake. Wow, what a brilliant idea. A perfect tactical maneuver. Well, not really. It turns out that the entire threat can be easily neutralized with just 2 missile devices. This is what proper deployment should look like. Ground units alternating with flying units. That setup minimizes the area of effect damage caused by missile explosions. That's everything I've prepared for today. I know it's been a while since the previous video. If you'd like to see more content in this longer format, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, or support the channel. Thanks for watching.